What's up everyone, it's a knife style here, and today I'm going to be doing my first impressions on the Spyderco Dragonfly. And this knife that I just recently got, it's a knife that I've carried for probably like 1.5 weeks, and it was a Spyderco that I got because a lot of people who I really respect their opinions really like the Dragonfly, and I figured it was one that I would also like. But one thing I was a little bit cautious about was how small it is, because even though I'm not really utterly like opposed to small knives, I prefer larger knives just to get a full-size grip in my hand. I'm not that concerned about blade length, so I was a little curious how I would, or what my thoughts would be about the Spyderco Dragonfly, so stay tuned to hear those. So first, let's talk about the anatomy of this knife. I'll throw up a size comparison here. Spyderco Military in the closed position is very similar to this one. But the anatomy of this knife, it has K390 steel with FRN scales. I think this is like some sort of sprint run. Now, I don't imagine that it's that hard to find because obviously the Dragonfly is not like a Para 3 or a PM2 or a Shaman that's going to sell out in minutes. And also, this is at a lot of retailers, so if you're looking at a smaller retailer that isn't like Blade HQ or something, there's a good chance they'll have it in stock. I think I just looked on River's Edge Cutlery and there was one going, or it was going for like $100 around there. I'll leave a link in the description to that if it's still available. But anyway, on this, it has K390 steel with blue FRN handles. The pocket clip is the wire clip. It's a small wire clip, but it is tip up and two-way reversible, and so that makes this a fully ambidextrous knife due to it being a backlog. It's also made in the no, it's not made in Taichung. It's made in the Seki City, Japan factory. A lot of times, I've done this video a couple times, I've just messed up a bunch, but I always keep saying it's made in Taichung, Taiwan, so keep in mind if I mess that up later in the video, this is made in the Seki City, Japan factory. But anyway, let's get on to the looks of this knife. Overall, I'm a fan of this color of FRN. You know, it's different than just regular black or something, and I think it looks good. But one question I have for you guys is I've noticed on these Spyderco steels that are like higher carbide, nicer steels, that the satin finish on them looks a little bit like a rougher grit of belt that they finish them on. You might be able to look in that ricasso area. Sorry, my lighting isn't the best for really picking this up, but if you compare that to like my Manix 2 and XHP, this looks like a much more kind of dulled finish, I guess, like they just finished it on a higher belt. And my question is, what my, I guess, hypothesis is on why this is the case is that these higher carbide steels probably will just eat away at these finer grit belts. I don't really know, please correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe there just isn't really the point to bringing them up to a higher grit because it would just waste a lot of money and not really be worth it in the end. Like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure. Also, if you look at the new Sage 1 in Maximet, that looks like a very rough finish on the satin blade. You know, some of their older Maximet models, like the PM2, Para 3, they have stonewash blades, but for some reason with the Sage 1, they did it with a satin finish. So please, I'd be happy to hear what you guys have to say in the comments. But enough about that. On to the actual blade of this, how the K390 has held up. And this is one of those things where even for this video and then for my review in a couple weeks to come, I guess, I probably won't be able to understand the full capabilities of K390 as a steel. And I know a bunch of people are just going to be like, oh, it's because you don't use your stuff. But no, it's because with this knife, even though I use it a bunch, it's to cut like tape and cardboard, and I'm not going to be doing like a tire cut test or a rope cut test or something crazy like that. I'm just going to be using it for my basic EDC stuff, and I think you guys understand that because this knife, maybe I'm thinking about maybe getting the Andela in K390 because I see a lot of people getting that. I don't know, maybe I'll be able to try it out more then. But at least for this, I probably won't be able to understand the full potential of the steel just because I frequently strop my knives because I enjoy sharpening and stropping, and I am probably not going to be using it for that hard of a task, as you guys may assume. But I did sharpen this knife. I sharpened it on one stone. Let me see if I can get this scratch pattern to come up. but there's a good chance I'm not going to be able to get it to. Basically, I sharpened this on a 600 grit Atoma stone, Atoma diamond plate, and this is one of my newest stones. I plan on doing a video on it soon because I really enjoyed it, but I didn't even bring it to a coarser grit. I just started straight on the 600 grit. This one formed a burr fine, knocked a burr off fine, and seems to be done fairly well. You know, to be totally honest, I sharpened my CTS XHP Manix 2 maybe like a day after or very close to after I sharpened this, so that I kind of knew how these compared, and the XHP on my Manix did feel a little bit better than this. It just deburred like a little bit faster and kind of apex easier, but I'm not saying that this is done soft. It honestly, I was expecting this to be like an amazing steel to knock off a burr in like one stroke, and it took a couple passes, but it was nothing crazy. The steel sharpened up fine. I don't want to give the impression that it was hard to sharpen at all. It didn't feel anything at all like my Hogue Deca here, which feels like soft M390. And so overall, the steel seems to be done probably a little bit on the softer side for K390, but really, like I said, I don't know much about this steel, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. Overall, it sharpened up good though, and this toothy edge has held up fine. I stropped it on white compound, but barely, because if you use the whites and the green compounds, what that does is technically with these higher carbide steels that you would prefer to keep with a toothy edge, it's kind of polishing out those teeth almost and kind of getting rid of the bite a little bit. You won't be able to notice it if you just, strop maybe 10 or 20 times on each side, but maybe after months and months of carrying and restropping, you will notice that it's kind of lost the bite to it. And so for that reason, I try to deburr as much as I could on my 600 grit stone. And then from there, I tried to strop as little as I could while knocking off the remainder of the burr. So enough about sharpening, because if you don't really understand what I'm saying, that's okay, you'll get there. But onto the blade shape and the blade geometry of this. So this blade shape is very effective. The point is very fairly low here, so it's pretty easy to just do regular draw cuts like that. A lot of times, like I said, I'm opening a package, so I'll cut one side of the tape, the other side of the tape, then put my finger here and go like that. I know it's rocket science, it's crazy, I'm such a knife expert, but this blade shape is overall really good. I have zero complaints with it. Also, this Dragonfly is ground pretty thin behind the edge. Let's get a quick measurement here. I'm looking at 11 thousandths, 10.5 thousandths behind the edge. Hope that's focusing on camera. But yeah, overall very thin behind the edge. I'll get a quick stock measurement here. Why am I so shaky? Looking at about 87 thousandths at the stock, so like 0.8, which is a very thin stock. And Spyderco, a lot of times when they have a thinner stock, they tend to grind their knives thinner. Now I want to make that clear that a thin stock does not equal a thin thickness behind the edge, but a lot of times it seems like Spyderco, it does. On their like for example, on a lot of the golden models, like the military Manix PM2 and Para 3, I don't think they all have the same stock thickness, but a lot of them are 20 thousandths behind the edge, while like this one, my Sage 5, my Gale Bradley 2, all ones made in Taichung or the Seki City, Japan factory, those are ground a little bit thinner. So I don't really know what's up there, but all I do know is that I'm happy that this thing is like 10 to 12 thousandths behind the edge and a very thin stock. It's going to be a great cutter. And yeah, I really like that about the Dragonfly. I feel like it fits this knife perfectly. For the next part, I think I've addressed everything about the blade. For the fit and finish and lockup. So the lockup here, no side-to-side play, no up and down play. Pretty simple. Spyderco backlocks, I've had a really good experience with them, and I really have no issues. Also, the fit and finish, I guess the centering here. The centering is a little bit off, as you can see. Let me try and get that lined up perfectly. And a lot of people are going to get kind of upset about that. They're like, I'm paying $100 for a knife that is kind of small. It doesn't seem like there's much materials going into it, and it's off center. I can get a Civivi or a CGRB or a Bestech or whatever for 40 bucks, and it's got drop shutty action and perfectly centered. There's going to be a comment like that on a lot of videos that I have, but it's one of those things where even though, yes, I would like this to be centered, and I don't want to seem like I wouldn't like it to be centered, but this is a knife that I purely got to throw in my pocket and really just use. And even though obviously I would like the fit and finish to be a little bit better. I knew that this was coming from the Seki City, Japan factory, and I know that factory is not the best at fit and finish or anything. And so I knew what I was expecting coming into this knife, and it really has not disappointed me at all in that aspect. And so yeah, a lot of people might get upset about that, but truthfully, as a knife that I forget about and really just use, I'm not really that really hurt about the off-centered blade. But that's enough about fit and finish. I don't really have anything else to say. For the ergos of this knife, this is the thing that really made me like the Dragonfly, and it was also very surprising because I can get all 4 fingers on this knife, and that kind of surprised me because honestly, when I thought about this, I don't think I really ever watched a Dragonfly video or review before I bought this knife. And if I did, I probably forgot about it. But, being able to get 4 fingers on a knife this small and this lightweight, that's really good. And now, one thing about that is that, am I really going to be doing many cuts like this or like this? No, the truth is I'm not. I'm really going to be doing cuts like this or maybe like this. And so it's one of those things where the 4-finger grip isn't that big of a deal, but I really do appreciate it. I think it's cool that on a knife this small, I can still get all 4 fingers on it. If you have like big chunky hands or something, there is a spot for a lanyard hole. That lanyard hole does look kind of small, but you still could attach a lanyard on there and get a little bit of an extra grip on it with your pinky finger if you need that. But the ergos for this draw cut grip right here, if you can see, Spyderco did an extra step and put a little chamfer going along, kind of like, it's almost like a crown spine, but they didn't just round it over, And what that does is that makes it very smooth and very comfortable on your pointer finger, and I like that because it seems like Spyderco was really paying attention to the details and paying attention how they would use their knives. I don't really know who designed this knife. Oh, I forget whose logo that is. Is that Sal's logo? I don't know. I don't really know much about all that with Spyderco's, but I know that whoever designed this knife definitely has used a knife like this and knows that the people using it are going to do a lot of cuts where their fingers are up on the spine of this knife, so they want to make it as comfortable as possible because they're going to do a lot of cuts like this. And for example, a knife like the Spyderco Military, the reason that this has impressed me so much is because this is a knife that, has a pretty, it's not a 90-degree spine, but it is decently sharp. I probably could, as you can see, I can catch my fingernail on there a bit, but it's one of those things for this knife, my thumb's going to be here or like this. I'm never really going to go like this or like that. It just doesn't make sense to me at all. And so you don't really need that little chamfer on the spine, but this one, it actually is useful and a little bit of a quality of life improvement, and really just Spyderco showing attention to the details. And so a lot of people get obsessed with the value of knives when I would honestly rather see companies paying attention to detail than companies getting a cheaper price, but not really, I wouldn't say cutting corners, but not really doing anything extra or special to a knife, kind of like Civivi. I know I pretty much hate on them in every video, and I don't really mean to bring hate to them, but it seems like obviously they know their market is people who want to buy cheap knives, and so they're really doing everything possible to get the cheapest knife. And even though they have a lot of really good things like thin grinds, maybe they cheap out on the pocket clip or something. I don't know. I'm just making something up. But it's one of those things where I like to see the little attention to detail things, especially with a knife like this, and I can appreciate it. And honestly, I'll talk about value in a little bit, but I'm perfectly happy with this knife. And it was one of those that, yeah, it might have been hard to first purchase it, but after I got it, I never really thought about it being overpriced. So next, we are on to the action of this knife. And the action, it's a backlock. I know a lot of people don't like backlocks, but personally, I think backlocks are fine. I mean, it's a locking mechanism. It's simple, it's strong, and has 100% stood the test of time. I mean, it started with a buck 110, and it's still going strong today. It's one of those things where the backlock is a great locking mechanism, and I really have no issues with it. Is it the most fun thing to open and close? Of course not, but I actually can do this whole thing one-handed. I can flick it out with my thumb like that, and I wonder if I could Spidey flick it. Yeah, I can Spidey flick it, but I do have to use some wrist. That's about as good as I can do using no wrist. But I mean, Spyderco, for putting out backlocks and doing a decent amount of them, they do a great job. Like on my native, I can flick it out with my thumb. It drops my finger. Can I Spidey flick it? Yeah, they do a good job with their backlocks. They're strong. they're pretty smooth, and so I really like Spyderco's backlocks, and I think that, I mean, I keep saying this, but Spyderco does a great job with almost locking, with pretty much every locking mechanism that I've ever owned from them. I guess I have compression locks, back locks, liner locks, and then the ball lock on the Mannix. And so overall, they've done a great job with all of those. They might do some weird locks, or they might have done some, but I do know that they do a pretty good job with their locks, and they seem strong, simple, and secure. So for the action, no complaints here. I knew what I was expecting, and a lot of times in use, I just go like that, use my knife, go like that, and put it back in my pocket. The thumb roll works very well on a back lock because there really isn't some detent that you have to fight. It's really just the spring tension of this back spring right there. So for the last one, the value, for $98 to $100, whatever the price on this is, do I think that it is worth the money? If you ask me, hey, I'm looking for a small knife, I'm looking for a good steel, even though I really doubt anyone would ask for this, but let's say you're looking for a small knife with a really nice steel and really comfortable ergonomics. Oh, I completely skipped over the carry category. I'll get to that later. But would I suggest this knife? I think that I would, but first I would suggest the VG10 version. I'd suggest the Dragonfly and the VG10 version because VG10 is a steel that I am not opposed to. I actually like it. It's simple. It strops back good. It's Spyderco doesn't really seem, it's not like they have trouble with heat treating VG10. I haven't had any issues with my Delica in that VG10, but it's one of those things where I would suggest that because if they don't know much about steels, like honestly, do I really need K390 on this knife? Absolutely not, I don't. But it's one of those things where I think that the price on this knife, now that I own it and have used it, I am fine with paying the price. But if you only have $100 and you can only get one knife and you've saved up for months, would I suggest this knife? Probably not. What other knife would I suggest over it from Spyderco? Probably the Sage 5 Lightweight. It's about $120, or the Pair 3 Lightweight. I think that's around that $100 mark. This one, you have S30V Black FRN, a very medium-sized knife where you can get an easy full finger grip. You have a compression lock here, good action, good thinness behind the edge. So I'd probably suggest this over the Dragonfly. But now that I own the Dragonfly and have used it and enjoy it, I think that it is pretty good. Or I think I'm fine with paying the price, and I'm not bitter at all about the price I paid, and I don't feel like I'm being ripped off. So for the last, I missed action, I skipped over the carry of the knife. Overall, a lot of people might get upset that this pocket clip is a little bit farther up than the lanyard, or it is secondary to the lanyard hole. My thought on this is that it fits perfectly in my, I guess, watch pocket or fifth pocket, whatever you want to call it. And so I really have no complaints with that. Also, it's like 1.2 ounces. You could just throw this, you could honestly take the clip off, throw this in the bottom of your pocket, forget about it, and it'll be just fine. And I think that I have no issues with the carry. Some people might gripe about this, but you know, I think that it's so lightweight that it kind of cancels out all of the other complaints. Also, the wire clip, just because it's smaller, usually on smaller clips, there is a stronger tension on it. And so this has a stronger tension on it than like the one on my Sage 5 Lightweight right here. And so it's one of those things where this pocket clip, obviously I would like the tension to be a little bit less, but like I just said a couple seconds ago, it's so lightweight. I think it's like 1.2 ounces that you can really ignore all these other, not really issues, but quality of life improvements that could have been placed on this knife. So that is going to do it for the video. I know this got a little bit long, but I feel like I said everything that I wanted to say. But yeah, like I said, that's going to do it for the video. Expect I think tomorrow I'm going to be putting out a video, kind of like a channel update, because I just hit 800 subscribers, and I kind of want to do something with the new year, talking about how this last year was and what is expected to come with the new year. But that's going to do it for the video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.